theatre, film, TV and more. Suzy Wrong reviews it all on Joy Drive.
Hello, Suzy Wrong.
Hey, Warren. Last week, you gave me a little update on your dating stories.
Yes.
And it sounds like the person you're dating heard about it on air?
No, someone else heard about it on air and said, thanks for dumping me on the radio. But they were just joking. They're a friend of mine.
Oh, right. So this person that you're dating doesn't listen to your radio?
No, he does.
Does that mean that you can give us more
I can give
stories?
you, he listens to the podcast, so I'll just make sure I edit this out of the podcast. Good enough. He stayed over. I need to ask you, Suzy. I was going to give you a call, but I might as well ask you on the radio for some advice here, some real Suzy
Make it public. Let's
advice.
go.
Let's talk about it, because he stayed over on the weekend, and I don't know, it was hot here, and I really like to sleep cold. I'll have the air conditioner down on the lowest setting. I like it freezing cold. I even have one of those summer doonas in winter. I'm a very hot sleeper. It's easy for me to start perspiring when I'm lying in bed. He's the opposite, feels the cold, and kept saying, why do you have to have it so cold in here? So I thought, okay, well, I want him to be comfortable. I turned the temperature up. It wasn't that much, but up. And it was like boiling. I couldn't sleep. It was so hot. I was sleeping naked on top of the bed. And then he wanted to cuddle. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm burning up. What do you do, Suzy? How do you solve the problem? Because I know there are people, or there are couples out there, where one likes it hot and one likes it cold. What do you do?
Does it affect the relationship very much if you don't sleep together?
No, I'm a big believer, and that you have spare rooms, like one room and another room. Sleep is so important. I have no problems with that whatsoever. I think it's a great idea.
But then why are you sleeping together?
Well, I'm going to... That's Suzy, I love it. You've solved the problem. I love it. Come in for cuddles.
Coincidentally, today on the internet, I saw that people sell these like mattresses or mattress additions that enable you to have one hot, like half hot, half cold. So if you do get that serious, you can invest like $1,000 and get one of these solutions. I don't know how comfortable it'll feel. Like I don't know what it'll feel like if I like it cold as well, but I don't know how it'll feel like if the cold is within the doona. You want the cold to be on the other end, right? From the outside, from the atmosphere.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know how those things work.
Well, he said, look, I sleep even with an electric blanket now. So I thought, okay, I'll put one of those on. That'll solve everything. So we'll see how that goes. You can get an update next week.
Hang on. Your electric blanket in January?
Yeah, I know. Can you imagine?
Oh,
I know. I'm suffocating just thinking about it. I don't even have one in
There's a lot to sort out.
Oh.
There's a lot to be sorted out.
See, we get so set in our ways, don't we, Suzy?
We do.
I knew you'd understand.
Yeah, if you want to stay single for the rest of your life, you got to come to me for relationship advice. That's how I'm going to steer it.
Fantastic. I love it. Authentic, raw and honest. That's the best way to do it, as Suzy Wrong does all the time. Now, Suzy, today we're talking about Daniel Craig, Queer. Tell us about that.
William S. Burroughs was a key figure in the Beat generation of the 1940s and 50s. The American writer is known for semi-autobiographical books that are edgy and abstract, memorable for his revelations about homosexuality and drug addiction. One of his best-known books, Queer, was completed in 1952, but stayed unpublished until 1985. For over 30 years, it was considered too explicit and personal. And now in 2025, we have a film version of Queer appearing on our movie screens. I would say that it's no longer shocking to see a grown man indulge in these so-called vices, but it is certainly worthwhile bringing up these issues of abuse and obsession with particular reference to queer communities. The main character, Lee, is a wealthy American man spending time in Mexico trying to write, but is really only involved with getting himself intoxicated and with falling for a younger man, Eugene, who is probably a gigolo with only transactional interests in Lee. Lee is played by Daniel Craig and is presented very much as a self-destructive person, but the film is a glamorous one. So we don't necessarily think of Lee as a tragic figure or consider Queer to be a preachy sort of get your act together kind of narrative. It is fairly matter of fact with the moments of extremity that we find its characters. True to the novel, this is a film that expresses itself in a poetic language, but it is by no means placid. It gets wild later in the piece, and that's where I truly enjoyed the ride. Queer is directed by Luca Guadagnino and is as strikingly beautiful as you'd expect from this arty filmmaker who had made Call Me By Your Name and Challengers, just to name a couple. Queer may not deliver a lot in terms of story, but it is highly cinematic and very unconventional, which is a breath of fresh air in the current climate of interminable superhero and reboot movies. Warren, did you prefer the earlier romantic parts or the later more bizarro parts of the movie?
Probably the earlier, I think. I felt like there was a vulnerability to Daniel that I hadn't seen before. I mean, you see the characters that he plays in movies, but I felt like we were seeing the real him. And I liked that. I felt like I got to know him a little bit. Did you feel that?
I thought he did a really great performance of a person sort of addicted and a little bit lost. Like, he didn't kind of... I think it's very tempting for actors to kind of demonstrate too much of what they're capable of. And in this sort of drug addiction roles, we are very used to see actors kind of be really extra with the performance, and he was really really subtle but strong enough to let you know what's happening, and I really admired him for that. I did think though, goes back to what I've always said on this Tuesday chat, that if you cast the gay actor to play the gay role, you're just gonna find something a little bit more authentic. I just found that Daniel Craig didn't bring enough kind of flamboyance or something. It just looked really straight acting. It just looked really straight acting in a role in a movie that is really over the top.
I think there's something sort of as though the volume's turned down a little bit. There's something, I know exactly what you mean. Do you reckon though that, I suppose, I mean, he is quite visible, isn't he? So what do you think about queer representation in media? Do you think it's shifting to include larger, well-known stars like Daniel Craig, for example, Suzy?
I think that the film would never be made, and certainly not at this budget, without Daniel Craig, without James Bond. There are out actors who can certainly play the role very well, but I don't think that investors would put money into the film the way that they did here. And the big pleasure of this film is how expensive it looks and how kind of polished and just really sophisticated. I thought it was an amazing film, a rare gem for me. I do concede that some of it is hard to get into. It's hard to concentrate a little bit apart.
Sometimes there's a bit of chatter that goes on.
Yeah, a lot of the dialogue kind of leads nowhere, and you feel like, oh, I'm a bit lost. And yesterday when I saw it for the second time, and I known that the dialogue doesn't mean as much as the visuals, as the entire journey of it, and I kind of brought focus away from trying to listen too hard, and I found myself enjoying it even more. Just kind of watch it almost watch it like a silent movie.
Suzy, something I suppose that's powerful that comes out of this movie, we're talking about Daniel Craig Queer, is there's I suppose a subtle yet a really powerful support of the LGBTIQ plus community, and it might be advocating for inclusivity in film, or going to queer spaces, etc. But there's something about powerful about high profile actors, I suppose, advancing acceptance in the mainstream culture. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. I know what you mean.
It's sort of like allies.
Just like how many years ago now when we had Brokeback Mountain with very, very big stars telling a story that really needed to be heard. Yeah, I agree with that. Like I said, especially in this case, because it's an expensive film, and it's because it's such a difficult film to market. That this film was made at all is amazing to me, and I do love that. it is a film that I think kind of speaks more directly to queer people. Do you think? I feel like if you told this story to straight people, maybe they can understand the addiction parts of it. But I feel like it speaks very closely, very intimately to us about the closet experience, because this is in the 50s, and how that closet experience manifests itself in really ugly ways. But at the same time, we didn't have to see a lot of trauma. It was just seeing how a person had to hide themselves to the extent that they leave their home, go to a different country, and over there he's like abusing himself and all how that looks like, and I think a lot of that looks very familiar, falling in love with the wrong person and, almost looking like you're not worth having a real romance.
Oh, there's something worse than that when that happens.
Yeah. And I thought...
You're compromised because you don't think you're good enough.
Yeah, I think he does that, doesn't he? He kind of he knows that the guy's not really into him, but he's investing so much into it. And just as he's investing into the drugs and, just numbing himself out. And part of the film, I thought, maybe we have to feel a little bit numb watching the film. Because I thought, can we start feeling something? Can we start feeling some emotion? Because he is going through it a little bit, but we kind of never really feel a lot of emotion. And I thought maybe it is like the drug experience. Yeah, that a lot of queer people we just have to numb ourselves out and just admire the pretty pictures.
But did you feel like you saw the authentic Daniel Craig towards the end?
Yeah, I thought he did well. I know where you're coming from. Like, he's not putting on the James Bond character. He's being a real person. I just can't get over the fact that he just doesn't seem gay at all to me, But he is performing in an authentic way.
Now, were you a James Bond fan, Suzy?
Not very much so, but I did love a couple of films that Daniel Craig did with James Bond. I thought they were much more intelligent. Is that the right word? They were a little bit more cerebral than all the famous ones from the 60s, 70s. This was so cartoony. But I thought the Daniel Craig era had a couple of more kind of a little up the ante a little bit.
Just on that, I suppose what I'm going to ask is if you reflect on, I suppose, the ones that you've seen, do you think that there's moments in his films that he did that could be sort of interpreted as queering the iconic franchise, or I suppose softening it up?
All right. I was always very interested in that very iconic image of Daniel Craig coming out of the ocean in a pair of swim trunks.
Who wasn't interested?
Yeah, I know. But I loved how it was. We never saw James Bond presented like that. Obviously, all the Bond girls were in bikinis all the time, but this time we were able to kind of objectify him in a different way, in a way that I guess gay men are used to, but the straight world is not used to. And from a perspective of a woman, I enjoyed it. I felt like, yeah, I don't want to see him strut around in a tux and a gun anymore. That was sexy back in the day. But now this is a new way. We're going we women can be raunchy and women can admire men from that perspective as well. So I guess there is that he was sort of queer. And also, this film. Yeah, and so straight men, gay men. I'm sure they can look at that photo and think that is without a doubt a powerful image. And this film Queer is very similar to a movie that Daniel Craig made in '98, which is the first time I had noticed him. Can you imagine 98? A lifetime ago. Called Love is the Devil, where he plays a young lover who may or may not be gay of an older man. So the tables are turned a little bit with queer. And in that film, he had gone into a queer space, because Love is the Devil was completely a gay film from that era where there was a lot of independent gay film. So to me, he started off his career from that space, and then, very deservedly, he became very successful, and he went to the mainstream, and for, I don't know, a decade or two, he was doing, really kind of stereotypical male characters. And now it's interesting to see him come back to something a little bit more intense, a little bit more intimate, a little bit more sensitive.
And and I think you're right, because if you look at, I suppose Bond is traditionally this, what would you say, like a hyper masculine sort of character, and in this, in Daniel Craig Queer, we see something a little bit more vulnerable. Like I said before, I liked it. I prefer the vulnerability. I think vulnerability is great, Suzy.
I think when you're doing art, you can't get away from it, and I guess maybe that's why I feel like his James Bond movies were a little bit arty, because he can't really help himself but bring a bit of that flavor. Like, he's not really just rough and tumble, and that's all he is. He was never that person. Yeah, he was never really that person. He always brought some, or at least some gravitas to it. So it's great. I was surprised at how much I loved it, because, once I see a straight man playing a gay role, I feel like a lot of prejudice comes out of me.
Yeah, of course.
But when I watched it, I thought, this is a really intelligent movie, and it's made with a lot of bravery. Like, I feel like I want to know how they were able to convince people to put so much money into it.
But if you just contrast that picture that you brought up before about him coming out of the ocean, and then contrast, his vulnerability, his addiction, the things that he addresses in the movie, I mean, it's quite a contrast, isn't it, to the two different images that are being portrayed?
Yeah, I wonder what that means, in terms of how we think of Hollywood stars and what their careers mean. Like, do they have to go there if ultimately all they want to do is make really good art? Do they have to spend 10 years, 15 years doing films that, I want to think maybe are not really something that he truly loves? But, I never know. Like, he will never say that he never loved those films. But maybe that's a career of those sort of that level of acting. You can't get away from playing these kind of quite vapid roles.
You know what I love about it is Bond, hyper masculine, strong, and vulnerability, still strong. It's not weak. I love it. I reckon he just wrapped it up perfectly.
Yeah. I can't recommend this film more. But be warned, it is very arty.
It is very arty. It is called Daniel Craig Queer. Suzy Wrong, thanks for your relationship advice today.
Come to me if you want to stay single. That's what I said.
What are we watching next week?
Optics is a new comedy series dropping tomorrow on ABC. You'll be able to watch all episodes on iView from tomorrow evening. And if you pay attention, a lady named Susanna Barley is going to make a brief appearance at some stage, played marvelously by yours truly.
Oh my God!
It's all very exciting. And I will see you next Tuesday.
Can't wait.
Bye for now, and a very happy Lunar New Year to all of you.
Happy Lunar New Year. So it's Optics on ABC iView.
You're tuned in to Joy Drive on Joy 94.9.